OpenAI is currently in talks, according to reports, specifically one from The Information, who everyone knows is like a very big AI kind of leaker platform or newspaper news source. In any case, they're in talks to close a new funding round at a $100 billion valuation. Now, this is really interesting. This might be one of their biggest infusions of capital since Microsoft made their famous $10 billion investment for 49% of the company, a year ago. So this is really interesting. There's some interesting players that are coming into this, and also based off of what OpenAI has done in the past with their employees, I think there's some interesting precedent and nuggets to take out of what they're actually doing here. Before I get into that, I wanted to mention the number one thing I think that you should be doing to better elevate yourself when it comes to your personal brand or your business is start a podcast. I know I'm biased because I'm sitting here talking to you on a podcast, and I obviously love podcasting. I've been doing this for 5 years, and my podcast AI Chat has over 4 million downloads on my content I've created. But regardless, I do think that this is something that's really valuable for everyone. And if you are interested in starting a podcast to help your business or your personal brand, you need to take my podcast course. I just made a course, and for this week only, I have it's normally $300, but for this week only, I have a 50% off discount code that if you're interested in the course, now would be the week to do it. My one thing that I'll say is if you do end up taking the course and loving it, and you use this discount code, then please send me a review or a testimonial over on LinkedIn. I'm essentially just trying to build up some testimonials, and so that's kind of how I have this discount code for now. So if you're interested in it, the link's in the description. I would love to have you on the course. It talks about how I went from 0 to 4 million downloads, how I was able to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars via podcasting, and every single mistake I made along the way so you can avoid them. So there's dozens of videos, and this is something that I think will be really powerful. So you can check out the link. But getting back to what OpenAI is doing, so this is really interesting because they allegedly are having Thrive Capital, who is going to be putting in $1 billion into this round. The valuation is going to be over $100 billion right now, which is a lot higher than the previous $86 billion valuation. And they actually, so it's a lot higher, but it's not like we're not seeing orders of magnitude jumps, right? Because like in the past, it was, it was growing very, very quickly. They went from 20 billion to 100 billion in a very short amount of time. And so we're starting to see, I guess, diminishing, it's not like, oh, wow, it's worth $1 trillion now or something like insane thing. So hopefully that's more sustainable. What I did want to talk about was what's interesting is back in February of this year. So this wasn't even that, I guess it wasn't even that long ago when they did have the $86 billion valuation. This was when they raised some money, but they also let their employees to essentially sell some of their shares in the company. And this actually played into the whole, I believe this played into the whole, all of the employees being really behind Sam Altman and wanting him to come back on board after he got kicked off. They all started like tweeting on X and saying things like OpenAI is nothing without its employees or nothing without its people and stuff, and all these hearts and stuff. I think a big part of that is because they knew that this $86 billion deal was about to happen. They all wanted to sell shares. So there was, millions of dollars in employee stock options floating around. And they knew that if Sam Altman got kicked out, the whole company would go into turmoil, and this $86 billion deal might have been canceled. I actually heard before this happened, it was something like a $90 billion or maybe even close to $100 billion. But then after the whole Sam Altman shakeup, it seemed a little shakier and I think a slightly discounted valuation. In any case, this went through, a lot of employees were able to sell shares alongside other funding efforts. That being said, it definitely, when employees sell alongside of, essentially they get to add into the round of funding, it does mean the company raises a little bit less money. So why is that important? How much money do they need? Where are they at? I think what's really interesting is currently, they need a lot of money. Wall Street Journal says that their annualized revenue just passed $3.4 billion early this year. So we can expect by the end of the year that will grow significant, or probably a bunch. But we also have some leaks from The Information that are saying OpenAI is on track to lose about $5 billion by the end of this year. So what have they actually spent that on? Apparently, they have already spent that on AI training and staffing. And what's even more eye-watering than losing $5 billion is the fact that they have burned $8.5 billion in AI training and staffing this year. So, like, yes, they'll lose $5 billion, but that's because they're making $3.4 billion. So they've actually spent $8 billion. So to me, it's just wild to think that a company that's so popular, so successful, is making from very small to all of a sudden making $3 billion a year. It's actually spending $8 billion. That is absolutely insane. The amount of compute. Now, I know that a lot of this probably is tied up with some of their big moonshot projects with Sora, their video editor, and a lot of other things. It is interesting to me, though, that we have other much smaller companies that are coming out with still very powerful video or image generation models. So I'd be curious to see, what level OpenAI just throws money away on some of this stuff, and kind of burns it to be fastest and first, when if they, just were slightly waited a little bit longer, they might be able to be they might be able to save exponential amounts of money, because we are seeing there's a bunch of new technology that came out. XAI just rewrote one of their stacks for some of their tech. I think their inference stack for their Grok AI model, which is like ChatGPT, and just 2 developers in 3 days rewrote the inference stack with some new open source software that made it more efficient, essentially. And their AI model literally got twice as fast, 2 times as fast, and the responses were a little bit better. So there's like a whole bunch of these optimization things that we can do with these AI models, and I just wonder what level OpenAI is focusing on optimization versus just trying to blast as fast and quick as possible to stay ahead, but burning $8 billion is insane in my opinion. In any case, who's who's piling into this? There's been a bunch of reports. TechCrunch has been reporting on it, and of course we have the insider, or the information that's reporting on it. Apparently, Thrive is going to put about $1 billion in. Microsoft is also expected to be participating in this round, according to the Wall Street Journal. They have a story about this. It's no one knows exactly who else is going to. There's some rumors. Coastal Ventures, Infosys, and Y Combinator are all some of their existing backers. And of course, Microsoft put in about $10 billion in January 2023, I believe. So this would be one of their biggest infusions of capital since then, right? I mean, at least $1 billion from Thrive. Now, there have also been a whole bunch of rumors coming out that Nvidia and Apple are currently in talks to contribute to this next fundraising round. What's interesting, because this is according to some sources at the New York Times, who kind of said that this was going to happen. Bloomberg also reported on Nvidia's involvement. And then at Wall Street Journal has been kind of like leaking and talking about the story of Apple potentially being interested in this. Microsoft already owns 49% of OpenAI, so I think it's going to be interesting. Whatever they invest or put in, I mean, all that's doing is buying a bigger stake, at which point, I mean, if they have 49%, how much more do they have to put in to get over 50%? And if they own over 50%, I don't know. It's just so interesting to me to think like a company like Apple could be investing in a company which is about to be more than 50% owned by one of their biggest competitors, you could say. So I just find that so fascinating to think like Apple's putting into a company that's essentially owned and controlled by Microsoft. Yeah, it's interesting. But at the same time, you see Apple is using them heavily and going to be integrating them into the iPhone and their Apple Intelligence and all that kind of stuff. So it's like you understand why they put money in, because they want to kind of control it. Now, what's interesting is Apple is not a company that actually traditionally invests in a lot of startups. They normally acquire them, buy them, incorporate them into what they're doing, but they don't usually just invest in them and let them run solo. With a couple exceptions, there was a ride-hailing app, a Chinese ride-hailing app. They put $1 billion in, I think, back in 2016 or 17. And there's been, there's been a couple others, but it's really not very, very common that this happens. So it'll be interesting to see what Apple's role in this is. Obviously, all this money is needed with all the money that they're burning, $5 billion a year. Right now, it's interesting because OpenAI needs all of the companies that are investing in it are also kind of like vendors in one way or another, right? So OpenAI is using Microsoft for their cloud. OpenAI is using Apple in order to get more distribution of their products, because they've actually said that Apple is not going to pay them for ChatGPT. They're offering that for free to essentially get more people using it, which is really interesting. And then, of course, OpenAI needs Nvidia because they're using their GPUs to train their AI models. So whether it's Nvidia, Microsoft, Apple, OpenAI is kind of like relying on everybody and everyone's using them. But it's interesting how this is like an ecosystem where it feels like people are investing in OpenAI, but OpenAI is also shelling the money right back to some of the companies that are investing in it, which brings up the question of, is this like some sort of accounting thing, or like where do you realize the revenue? Like, is Apple all of a sudden making or is like Microsoft making an extra $1 billion of revenue if OpenAI spends $1 billion that they gave them on their cloud platform? It's really interesting to see how that goes. But in any case, all companies are definitely getting buoyed up, and the markets are frothy, valuations are frothy because of all of this. And yeah, I'm excited to see how this goes down and to see exactly how much they actually raise. They definitely need the money. It's going to be interesting to see how much they raise. I don't think they're going to have a problem actually being able to do this. But it'll be interesting to see how the cards shake out in the end. So if you enjoyed the episode today, it would mean the world to me if you left a review of the podcast. And also, if you are interested in starting your own podcast, check out the course. The promo code is AI Chat, and it's for this week a 50% off code on that podcast course, which I think if you're interested in podcasting or starting one or growing your podcast will be mind-blowing and amazing to you. So hope you all have an amazing rest of the day and hope to see you in the podcast course.